In my recent run of Pokemon Let's Go Pikachu as Red, I decided to battle every trainer in the region. Not because Red does so in canon, but because I was curious to see what the NPC trainers of Kanto look like, what Pokemon they use, and most importantly, what they say. I've done a pretty similar video on the trainers in Scarlet and Violet and wanted to see just how different things might look in the first region of Pokemon. I realized that the Let's Go games are not a perfect recreation of the original ones, but it's the closest thing we have on the Switch, so just deal with it. To start things off, I'd like to point out that there's a total of 315 trainers in the Kanto region, which is somehow more trainers than the large open world entry, which only had 293. And before you go, oh yeah, sure, there's more trainers in Let's Go. After all, the game adds master trainers for almost every Pokemon in the Pokédex. But I'll have you know that this census does not include those trainers. That's because they don't say anything of value and are just there to serve as a post-game challenge for players who truly want to be the very best. I've also excluded main story trainers from this census. Trainers like the Elite Four, Gym Leaders, Rivals, Jesse James, and Archer are not on this list. That's because they're recurring characters and we already know that they have important dialogue that adds to the main story, and I'm interested in seeing what all of these other random NPCs have to contribute. Since the game is a lot more linear than Generation 9, I think it makes sense to go route by route with fun facts about each place, but before we look at each individual tree, I think we should step back and gaze at the forest. For starters, I sorted all of the dialogue we get into 5 categories. There's trainers who just say random stuff like how they like shorts, which I'll call the gibberish trainers. There's 170 of those in the whole region, so about half the trainers say nothing of value. Then there's trainers who give you gameplay tips. Things like Pokemon have different sizes, or here's how this specific TM works. There's 46 of these trainers, but for some reason, only 4 of them are trainers you have to fight. And only 12 of these 46 are the optional coach trainers, which give you a TM or Pokemon candy as a reward for winning, while also explaining what the items do. Some of them just give you the reward and they don't say anything about how it works. The next tier of trainers are the ones who give you location-specific information, such as you need to use Light Up to get through the Dark Cave, or I hear there's Bulbasaur in the Viridian Forest. A lot of them provide useful pointers to where you can find certain Pokemon or how to clear a certain puzzle, or just relevant lore to a location, and that's about 61 of the trainers in the region, with 14 of them being unskippable. Group 4 is the ones that talk about other trainers in the game, such as the kid that gasses up Brock. Most of them can be found in the gyms, but we do see a few on Victory Road who mention Giovanni and your rival by name. Overall, there's only 19 of these trainers, and the only ones you have to battle are the ones that name your rival and Erica. And of course, the last group of 19 trainers are discussing more major things like whatever's going on in the story, or general Pokemon world lore, like the existence of Dive in another region. And surprisingly, a lot of these trainers are Team Rocket grunts telling you about what Team Rocket is doing. A lot of these trainers could easily squeeze their way into a different group, so keep in mind that these numbers are based on a very subjective sorting. Although overall, I can say with high certainty that only about 15 to 20% of the trainers in the game are adding something to the overall lore, while the rest are just being silly or giving you useful information on how to play the game. If you wanted to battle some trainers, the best spots to go are Silph Co, the Rock Tunnel, and Pokemon Tower, but considering the most populated place is also just temporarily available, then the number 3 slot would go to Victory Road. If you wanted to go to a more secluded place where there's not a lot of trainers, then your best bet is to visit Route 1, Route 18, and Route 16, which barely have any trainers on them. But they're all also very tiny routes, so you'll still run into the trainers. When it comes to trainer classes, the 3 most popular are Team Rocket Grunts, Ace Trainers, and Beauties. The thing is, these classes are super popular because all 3 of them contain at least 2 different trainer models. For example, the Rocket Grunts and Ace Trainers have a male and female variant, while the Beauties are split between female swimmers and what would have actually been Beauties in older games. There's also a big asterisk on the Team Rocket members since none of them have a unique name, but it is very likely that they appear multiple times throughout the game, like this guy who uses Eradicate to steal the TM for Dig, likely being the exact same guy who ambushes you on Route 10, but we have no proof because there ain't no name to this man. So if we were to look at the less ambiguous top 3 types of trainers, then we'd have picnickers and campers tied for spot number 1, chandlers and lasses tied for spot number 2, and scientists holding spot number 3. It's quite the interesting mix for the popular trainer classes. Meanwhile, the least popular ones see a 4-way tie between gamer, roughneck, rocker, and engineer for 3rd place, psychics for 2nd place, and a soul karate master who looks no different than the black belts and is technically an ex-gym leader getting slot number 1. Team sizes tend to be pretty small in this region, with 84% of trainers having either 1 or 2 Pokemon, and only 8 trainers having 4 or more Pokemon on their teams. Speaking of Pokemon, the most popular Pokemon in the region are Haunter, Ghastly, and Coughing. Now, for the least popular, well, there's a whole list of Pokemon that never get used by the NPCs, but they do show up at least once on teams of major characters like Gengar and Parasect. There's also the legendary and mythical Pokemon which we wouldn't expect to see on anyone's team. So if we exclude all of those Pokemon, then there's still 3 Pokemon from the Kanto Pokédex that do not show up a single time in the base game. Kabuto, Almanite, and Abra. I guess this thing just runs away before anyone could catch it. And with that, we've covered the general statistics. Now let's take a closer look at the trainers route by route for some juicy bits of lore. And what a better place to start than where it all begins, on Route 1. When you first visit this route, there's actually no trainers here, but once you obtain your Pokédex and can finally set off on your journey, you will encounter youngster Ronnie. He is an unskippable trainer who sets up the expectation that when you walk in front of a trainer, they will challenge you to a battle. And he's got everyone's favorite Route 1 Pokemon, Rattata. Route 2 has no trainers, so onto the Viridian Forest we go, where we can battle a grand total of 7 trainers, 3 of which are unskippable. However, the most interesting trainer in this forest is Lass Brittany, who tells you that she's seen a Bulbasaur in the forest. For new players, this is a great hint to go look for one, and for returning players, this is a huge sign for some changes in the Kanto region that they have seen in the past, because this is the first game where you can catch a Bulbasaur in the Viridian Forest. Up next, we've got ourselves the Pewter City Gym with one of my personal favorite trainers in the whole game. You're pretty hot, but not as hot as Brock. Gamers, how do I get myself a wingman like that in real life? Maybe I go look for one on Route 3, which has a wide variety of trainers, all of which are skippable by the way. It is also the route where we get introduced to the optional but powerful coach trainers who will give you an extra gift for your victory. The first guy gives us a revive, but the coach trainer on Route 4, which is also the only trainer on Route 4, gives us payday so that we can make some bread while exploring Mount Moon. At the entrance of the cave, there's a whole bunch of kid trainers there to show off to the girls, look for fossils, or just meet up with their friends. One of them even mentions that he saw some suspicious characters in the cave, likely Team Rocket. One cool tidbit is that all of the regular trainers can be found on the first floor near the entrance, with a hiker standing near the area that takes you deeper into the cave, who warns you that kids shouldn't be wandering around here. When exploring in general, he feels like a random trainer, but it looks like he's just there to keep an eye out on the little ones and keeping them from going deeper into the cave. Unfortunately, this guy is not a required trainer, but the kid going, "I came all the way down here to show the girls how tough I am," is required. Get your priorities straight, Pokemon. This hiker deserves more love. Anyways, deeper in the cave, you can find a grand total of 3 Team Rocket grunts, only one of which is optional because he's in a completely different part of the cave. Homie definitely got lost. They make it pretty clear that Team Rocket is here to look for some fossils, but I guess they never found any, and they didn't realize that the nerd right next to them has a fossil on him, because even in the post-game, when Team Rocket is disbanded, these 3 are still hanging out in the cave as the last remaining members of the gang. Up next we have the Cerulean City Gym, which has 3 gym trainers, all of which are named after Misty's 3 sisters in the anime. However, none of them say anything about being related to the gym leader, only that the pool water in this gym comes straight from the ocean. North of Cerulean, we have the Nugget Bridge with a total of 6 required trainer fights just to cross over, which is the most required trainer fights you have to do, more than the ones in the Rock Tunnel, which has the most trainers outside of Silph Co, and more than Victory Road, the final most challenging route in the game. Unfortunately, none of the 5 main trainers say anything of value, and all of their endlines are basically just saying, "I did my best, I have no regrets." The last trainer on Nugget Bridge is an undercover Team Rocket recruiter who tried to fight you to convince you to join and then leaves, but hey, at least he kept his word and gave us the nugget. And last but certainly not least, there is an optional trainer who's hiding in the grass to the west of the bridge, and he goes, "Yeah, I saw the whole thing there and I'm too scared to leave because the guys on the bridge scare me." Having crossed the bridge, you're finally on Route 25, which also has a large variety of trainers, but only 2 required battles. The first being with a picnicker whose relationship won't last too long, but I think she might be the one leading the camper on, just like you can lead him on away from the hedge and snag the item hidden behind. The other required trainer is the first fisherman you meet, who seems to be blocking the way to Bill, a mysterious Pokemon fanatic that a few of the other trainers along the way mention in passing. But the most interesting trainer on this route has to be the optional coach trainer next to Bill's house, who claims to be a proud independent trainer at a popular date spot. Why is Bill's house a date spot? I thought she might give out a TM like Attract, but since that move isn't in the Let's Go games, we get Seismic Toss instead? How does this relate to dating spots? What is going on here? Sadly, there are no trainers on Route 5, so we're moving on to Route 6, which has to be one of the most boring routes in terms of trainers. There's a couple that seems to be whispering about something, the first gentleman and sailor type trainers you run into, and 2 kids blocking the way to the next town, but you only have to fight one of them to get through. In Vermillion City, you have a small gym with only 3 trainers, all of which will give you a hint on how to solve the gym puzzle, and one of them telling you about how Lieutenant Surge used to be his commanding officer when they were both in the army. Apart from the gym, you also have access to the first limited time area, the SSN, which will permanently leave port after you learn the secret technique Chop Down from its seasick captain. On board, you'll find a variety of trainers, mostly sailors and fishermen, although it sounds like there were much more trainers on board for a special party earlier. One of the fishermen shares that his dad had told him that there's 100 Pokemon, which makes me wonder how little do the people of Kanto know about the thousands of Pokemon out there in the world, and reminds me just how important this Pokédex project is. Also, I'm kinda curious what the 100 commonly known Pokemon in this region actually are. I would ask the sailor for more info, but unfortunately, that ship has sailed. The only other place you can access from Vermillion City is Route 11, which is unfortunately a dead end thanks to the Snorlax sleeping on the bridge. And it seems like one of the sailors in the area is eyeing to catch it. Unfortunately, he does not have a Pokeflute, so he has no way of even starting the encounter. There's an interesting pair of trainers on this route who happen to have extremely similar post-battle lines, saying, "I try to think that victory depends on the luck of the day, otherwise I get depressed." Another oddly familiar end line comes from this youngster who says the same thing as the trainers on the Nugget Bridge. "I did my best, I have no regrets." Maybe this is an intentional hint because the only way to make further progress in this game is to return near that Nugget Bridge and head east towards Route 9. The 2 required trainers on this route both tell you useful information for the upcoming rock tunnel, 1 that you need light up, and 2 that it takes you to Lavender Town. What they failed to mention is the Team Rocket ambush on the route ahead. They also don't explain why Route 10 is split into 2 sections, full of optional trainers but only 1 camper who gives a very interesting bit of information. That there's a large number of Pokemaniacs in the cave ahead, and that he's surprised to see them all the way out here. What I'm surprised about is the fact that this cave has the most permanent trainers, and also the most pointless required trainers, because not a single one of the 5 says anything of value. What's even weirder is that the optional trainers actually do. Like, there's this required ace trainer that goes, "Yeah, it's easy to get lost in a cave, so just bend some twigs to make a trail." But then there's an optional camper who tells you you won't get lost if you follow the dark patches on the ground, because that's the path made by the people walking in the right direction. Some mention that they're taking this route as a detour thanks to the sleeping Pokemon on Route 12, but most importantly, we see this Pokemaniac who really wants her Pokédex. Once again hinting to the fact that this is not a common thing that people own in the Kanto region, but also he never really explains why there's a bunch of Pokemaniacs in this cave to begin with. You're not gonna find a random Pokédex in this cave. My best guess is that perhaps they're out here looking for a shiny Charmander or something, because you can find Charmander in this cave. After leaving the cave and seeing Team Rocket kidnap a Cubone, you're directed to head west towards Route 8, which only has 1 required trainer, who plays the Who's That Pokemon game with you. A cute, round, and fluffy Pokemon? That's gotta be Jigglypuff, right? It is Clefairy, and by the way, did you know you need a Moonstone to evolve it? This route also has 2 very interesting gamers, whose only strategy is to spam one-shot moves at you with their Pokemon. And considering these moves are high risk, high reward attacks, I think they actually fit really good with the trainer class. And last but not least, we have a couple of trainers hanging out near the entrance to Saffron City who are complaining about how the gatekeeper won't let them through. Something tells me this nerd guy is never gonna go touch grass again. On the other side of Saffron, we have the tiny Route 7 with only 2 trainers, one to give you a TM and one to tell you that there's a gym in Celadon. Speaking of which, the first trainer you battle there is also the one that greets you at the door, which is different from every other gym where that is the ref's job, but the Celadon gym's ref is addicted to gambling, so this girl's gotta pick up the pace. Counting how many of the trainers are required fights here is a bit tricky because it looks like you can skip most of them by just clinging to the ledge. One interesting thing to note is that in the older games, there's this old guy who's staring into the gym and going on about how there's all these cute girls in there, ooh, but it got changed to say strong trainers instead. However, one of the girls in the gym is still very much concerned about us peeking into the gym to stare at her or Erica, so even though the old guy's lines got changed, the implication that someone's staring through the window to peek at girls is still there. The creepy factor did not get removed. Another thing still there is the Team Rocket hideout, which has 3 required trainer fights and an undercover spy, who happens to stick around long after Team Rocket vacates the premises in the post-game. Unlike most other routes, the grunts here will give you useful tips like how you need to get a key to use the elevator and how they see a Cubone being brought into the base. Once you're done with Team Rocket and got yourself a Silph Co, you can finally make your way back to the Pokemon Tower, which is packed with only Channeler type trainers and a single scaredy cat coach hanging out by the entrance. Unfortunately, we do not get much information about the 13 channelers in this mysterious tower, apart from the fact that they were all possessed, and one of them mentioning that they could not identify the ghost. Based on their lines though, you can kind of figure out that she's talking about Marowak. Perhaps the spirit of Marowak was causing a lot of trouble in the Pokemon Tower, and a bunch of them got brought in to try and help, only for all of them to fail and then get possessed by other random ghosts. Also zombies? Confirmed in Pokemon? After clearing the tower and getting yourself a Pokeflute, you can now make the Snorlax on Route 12 get out of the way, but first you have to walk by a bunch of fishermen and another lady coach trainer who seems to be a bit obsessed with romance. And she gives you Dream Eater, which tells me a lot about how her past relationships went, but hey, there's plenty of fish in the sea and plenty of fishermen nearby to help you catch them. Good thing about Route 13 is that it is a bit of a winding maze with a ton of skippable trainers. The only one of note here is the Ace trainer who confirms everyone's suspicions that coach trainers are just a recolor, and he gets to wear that cool blue jacket once again after quitting his job as a coach. Route 14 is confusingly small and has a punk guy version of the Nugget Bridge, literally giving you a nugget in the grass after you beat up all of the trainers. But instead of meeting with a Team Rocket recruit, you get to meet with this guy who's frustrated that he cannot evolve his Machoke despite leveling it up. I got bad news for you, buddy. Giving it stones won't help you evolve it. There is also a required trainer battle with a bird keeper who says nothing of value, but then his optional friend tells you about the 3 birds of legend you might spot in Kanto. Why isn't he the required trainer? And just like the creepy old man peeping at the all-girls gym, we got ourselves another reference to how things used to be in the good old days. This kid tells you about how you should use TMs, but after the battle is shocked to see that your Pokemon can use a secret technique, and that unlike regular moves, they will never be forgotten. I'm 99% sure that this just used to be a line about HMs and how your Pokemon cannot just unlearn them like a regular move, but since HMs are gone, now they're freaking out about your secret techniques that you never use during battle anyways. And just like you cannot unlearn an HM, I have unlearned just how many routes it takes to get from Lavender Town to Fuchsia City, because there's still one more route to go, which has a bunch of skippable trainers on the way into town. The only one with something interesting to say is this beauty who basically confirms that some people treat their Pokemon as pets, and for her that means being a dog mom of 3 and having a scary dog privilege when going out for a walk alone. Things finally get a little bit more interesting in the Fuchsia City gym, where you learn that most of the trainers are here to learn about being a ninja from Koga, and get some useful hints on status conditions and the foggy wall, which sadly disappears once you clear the gym. What's even more sad is Route 18, which I don't know if I can even consider a route because it's just one tiny patch of grass with 3 bird keepers around it. Moving on to Route 17, also known as Pokemon Road, also known as the former Cycling Road, this place has a large variety of trainers as well as a very unique style. That's because every trainer here has one Pokemon from their team walking outside of their Pokeball. I thought this was a pretty neat detail, and it was kinda useful since I would know which Pokemon I might have to fight. North of this pretty area is Route 16, which has two punks and a roughneck hanging out, reminiscing about how they used to ride their bikes up and down Route 17 and still want to hang out in the area. Which is kinda nice for them because we have this poor coach trainer hanging out in the power plant, and that is apparently the second least desired place for each coach trainer to go. I never did find out what the first one is, your guess is as good as mine. But at least he might have some company from the one random Pokemaniac hanging out near the entrance, which is very much out of the way from everything. So let me get back on track with the Saffron City Gym. Here we see the only two psychics in the whole region, and an ace trainer that tells us how the fighting dojo next door lost its gym status after being absolutely obliterated by the psychic type trainers here. But this doesn't seem to have discouraged the black belts training there, who are still gassing up their master and give you hints on what's strong against the fighting type trainers. We also get to meet the most rare trainer class in the region, the Karate Master, who was likely a gym leader and then got demoted after losing the status. But funny enough, neither of the two gyms do anything to help out Silph Co when it gets raided by Team Rocket, temporarily making it the most trainer populated area in the game with 18 Team Rocket grunts, 10 rebel scientists, and 1 random juggler. There is also one spy dressed as a Pokemon nurse, and she knows exactly how easy it is to sneak in since you don't really have to fight any of the 29 trainers raiding the office. The only exception is having that one fight against Archer and the random grunt to get the keycard. And then you can go straight to the C-suite level without taking on any of these grunts. Which, to be fair, you aren't missing out on much dialogue. There's the 4 Rocket Sisters, whose only lore is that they're the Rocket Sisters, and then there's several scientists who have defected to Team Rocket with the promise of researching to their heart's content, or battle you because they're on guard due to the invasion. Like this one guy who told you that they worked on the ultimate Pokeball, which could catch even a legendary Pokemon without fail. Tell that to Kieran. There were 2 scientists whose quotes seemed a bit interesting. The first is this guy who's upset that the Silph Co boss transferred him to the Boondocks. This makes me wonder if Kanto is supposed to be the Boondocks, or if there's another Silph Co office somewhere very rural and he would have to move there soon. The other interesting guy is this scientist who works for both Silph and Team Rocket. He's just trying to make ends meet. This man's living in 2025. And for those of you who think I'm sounding crazy, for reference, you need to make $100,000 a year to live comfortably in the state of Georgia. But the median salary is $55,000 and the average is $76,000. You literally need 2 jobs just to live. Come on, government, do something. Sorry gamers, didn't mean to get all political on you, so I guess I better go cool off on Route 19, which is full of swimmers and beauties who are talking about the Seafoam Islands, as well as this guy telling us about Dive. Unfortunately, we did not get a single Pokemon game with Dive on the Nintendo Switch, unless you count the new Pokemon Snap, because what's a Hoenn? These Seafoam Islands are very cold and completely devoid of trainers, except now we have a coach trainer, Yas, who comes here every day with no one to battle. And then there's also this one picnicker at the entrance who does not want to battle us, but does suggest we use a repel. Once you make your way through, you'll be on Route 20, where some trainers will tell you about the upcoming Cinnabar Island with its scientists and active volcano, which is nowhere to be seen. The gym itself is pretty interesting, not only because it has nerds and burglars in it, but because this is the one time in the whole game where the defeat quote actually matters. That's because you don't actually get to talk to these trainers after the battle, so the typical loss quote of "Ow!" is replaced with coherent dialogue. And even then, only one of them is interesting enough to read, telling you all about Blaine's backstory of how he was lost in the mountains and met a Moltres which guided him through a dark path. We get even less useful information from the trainers in the Pokemon Mansion, most of which are burglars and scientists. One of the scientists mentions that his mentor used to live here and suggests you go down the really long ladder, while the other, the only required trainer in this area, tells you that he knows nothing about a key and that you should get out. It seems that apart from the one guy with the ladder, no one else knows what happened here, not even the ones who've snuck into the lower levels. So I'll sneak back out and surf north towards Pallet Town on the second to last route, 21, which sadly doesn't have any interesting trainers on it. Maybe the one guy that's got 6 Magikarps on his team, but even then, none of them say anything interesting or of value at this point in the game. The Viridian City Gym feels just as bland, with most of the trainers just poking at you about whether or not you know who the gym leader is. But what I want to know is, what were all these guys doing while Giovanni was away running Team Rocket for the past couple of years? There is one gym leader here who is quite literally the other word for donkey, because he waits near the exit to the gym and challenges you to a battle, fully knowing that the only reason you'd even go this direction is because you wanted to leave and visit the Pokemon Center. After kicking everyone's butt, I could finally go to Victory Road, which hits you with a Ditto Coach Trainer, a second Coach Trainer to give you Outrage, and 5 unskippable battles, which didn't say anything of value except for the one juggler who mentions your rival by name. I should have picked a better name. And most interesting of all is the last trainer you have to fight before reaching the Elite Four, which is a Pokemaniac with a very suggestive team? I don't want to question it. Anyways, you'd think we're all done here, but there's still 2 more trainers to cover who we could encounter but could not battle until after becoming champions. First up is the coach trainer guarding the entrance to the Cerulean Cave, as well as the TM for Megahorn. And last but certainly not least is Morimoto, who claims to be helping the coach trainers, but he's not just a coach trainer, he's the guy who made Mew. And he also has been the battle planning director for most of the newer Pokemon titles, but funny enough, he's not listed in the credits for this game. But hey, he made it in the game, so that's better than Scarlet and Violet. Overall, I really liked how a lot of the trainers, especially early on in the game, would give you useful game tips and relevant information like needing certain stones to evolve certain Pokemon. And while I did enjoy the silly quotes from some of the trainers, I still think that it's a big waste to have over half of them speak complete gibberish. Either give them better jokes or have them talk more about the local lore. Why were there so many Pokemaniacs in the Dark Cave? What's Team Rocket trying to achieve by taking over Silph Co? And what's up with all the Chandlers in the Pokemon Tower? Maybe have them be possessed by spirits who speak of Kanto's past, seek revenge on Team Rocket, or literally anything other than, oh no, I guess I was possessed. That's what I'd like to see in future Pokemon games, but I would love to hear your thoughts on the topic. Do you have a favorite NPC in the Let's Go games? And how do you think Pokemon should handle their trainer designs and the more linear games? If they make any more of the linear games, or at least remake them, let me know in the comments down below. Either way, thanks for watching, I hope you enjoyed, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye!